in our understanding, there is a way that you can communicate and get in contact with these beings in a specific way. I'm not talking about poltergeist activity in your home, or, you know, where people are doing Ouija board and things like that, where they're trying to communicate with spirits. But what I'm talking about is black magic, which is completely haram and forbidden for mankind to get involved with. This type of information used to be quite popular in the UK. I mean, there's certain places around the UK where it was very popular, where some of the most powerful warlocks and witches used to live. There's an area called Canewdon, which is just in Essex, which is a small town, but it used to house many witches and people who used to study and teach that type of information. This is often shamanistic based. You have strange rules and regulations you have to follow and things you have to do to get in contact with them. During the sort of, let's say, I think it was around 1700, 18th century, you had a clearing up, shall we say. So you had the witch trials here in England and in America, where people were killed and executed, and, you know, for their practicing of magic. And it was something which was deemed a threat at that time to the government, to the people, and most of the believers who were Christian at that time, they were on these type of people, you know, doing magic and rituals and affecting society in the way they were. In the lens of materialism today, we look back at that time and we see the leadership as foolish. I mean, not us personally, but, like, you know, the general population will say, well, there's no such thing as magic. It doesn't exist. But what we find is that amongst particularly the aristocrats and, you know, the wealthy and the elites, if you want to, you know, call them that, even amongst the royal family, there were people who had that information, who had that knowledge. So when it was eradicated, so to speak, from the general population, and, you know, that information was lost, it was retained in the wealth, in the aristocracy, in the elites. They kept hold of it. And it's my opinion that often, I mean, there's a guy, I forget his name sometimes, but he's a great conspiracy theorist in America. And he followed the elites of the country, the political elite, and he followed them to a woodland area, and he snuck in and he filmed them. And they were doing strange rituals. They had a huge owl-like creature. They called it Moloch, which anyone who follows, you know, some of the history of who Moloch is, Moloch was the god of the Canaanites, allegedly. And they used to, you know, sacrifice children to Moloch. So they had this effigy of Moloch where they were, you know, burning fake children, allegedly fake. I mean, we just don't know, really, especially with the Epstein crime, you know, syndicate that went on over the last few decades. But they were burning an effigy of a child, and they were doing rituals for this alleged owl god called Moloch. The point being, Akhi, I don't think that, I think there's a big separation between knowledge, and I think, this is just my opinion, you know, I don't mind being wrong, but that the magic that was taught and, you know, spread among the people in Babylon all those years ago to Beni Israel, to the children of Israel, they took that knowledge and they kept it. And I think it still exists today. And I think it's still being used today. And I think that the people who use it and benefit from it aren't just the local village folk who get involved with Jinn worship and black magic, but I think it's also happening in, you know, with people wearing suits and going to, you know, having big positions in government and in business. I just wanted to make that clear, because we have what the population are taught, and then we have what people know behind the scenes. Great example of that, Aki, just to share this with you. If you're a scientist today, for the most part, if you're working in, say, a lab, a college, a university laboratory, unless you have security clearance, you're not working with the most up-to-date and most, let's say, powerful equipment. You're not working with the most up-to-date and well-accessed knowledge and data that you can get your hands on. There is a separation between intelligence So the intelligence community, they look at things from a different light than maybe a scientist does. And if something could potentially have a powerful effect, so let's say for argument's sake, there's a new invention. Let's use AI as a great example. AI has so much power in it, and it can change so many things that when questioned about it, two gentlemen who work in AI, they said they went to a meeting with a Pentagon official, an intelligence official, and they sat down with him, and they were talking about the dangers of AI. And that gentleman who was sitting there, he said, well, we'll just classify that particular, invention as illegal, and we'll classify it and we'll make it secret so no one can have access to it. And the gentleman, the guy who was sitting, he said, how can you classify mathematics is mathematics, you can't control that. And he said, yes we can, and we have already done so with physics. And physics is another portion of the endeavor to understand this world and how it works. There are certain things in physics that are classified, that are legal to have access to. One particular example is, atomic weaponry and how to build nuclear weapon and nuclear bombs. These are things that you're not allowed to, they're not just on a shelf in a library that you can go pick up and learn how to do. These are things that are classified, they're kept secret, only certain people have access to them. So we have a knowledge gap between what the intelligence community and the military defense community have access to, and then what the rest of us as a population have access to. There's a huge gap. Some speakers on this topic, especially the UFO topic, they're saying that there's hundreds of years difference between what we have behind the scenes and what we're given as a population. And there may be some truth to that. There may be, you don't want the public to have access to everything. But one particular thing they've alluded to is energy resources. So there's certain ways of creating energy that allegedly exist in the black programs, in the secret programs amongst Britain and America and Europe, I'm sure. And I'm sure every big country in the world is working on programs like that. But it's not being brought to the public because it's too powerful. And it also, you lose control mechanism. You lose the ability to control what the public have access to. If me and you, Akhi, we had our own energy generation device in our houses, who's going to be able to turn it off? Who's going to be able to tell us no? You kind of like lose control of the population that way. So I would say that definitely today we are more materialistic as a public nation, but I would say privately, behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on, and there's information kept away from us pertaining to these creatures, the Jinn, number one, pertaining to the history of mankind, where we're truly from and the purpose of which we're here for. And and I'd say there's evidence to suggest that this has been kept hidden from us deliberately. And it's also mentioned in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that on that day when he gathers together the Jinn, and he will say to the Jinn, "O Maqshar al-Jinn, we have, O gathering of the Jinn, you have indeed misled many of mankind." And then their allies among mankind will say, "Oh Allah, indeed some of us have made use of others, and we have now reached a term that we have appointed for us." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that your residence is hell, by which you will abide therein forever, except for what Allah wills, and Allah is most wise and knowing. In this ayah, we learn that on the day of judgment, the Jinn will be brought forward, and Allah will say to them directly, "You have misled many of mankind," but they're allied. So there is a group, that are allied with the Jinn. And these are the people who communicate with them. These are the witches. These are the warlocks. These are the people of magic, the magicians. And they will say, some of us have made use of others. So there was a mutual agreement. And these individuals know what this agreement entails. And it benefits the Jinn and it benefits them, those elite people, those magicians. And then they will say, and now we have reached the term you have appointed for us, meaning we knew this day was coming. We knew the day of judgment was coming. They understood the deal. They understood that they don't get no share in the hereafter, because what was sent down through Harut and Marut, the two angels. See, Babylon was a very special moment. And I say special, but it's a very powerful moment in the history of mankind, because that was where a test was sent from Allah, unlike any other test that was sent. And this test was to learn magic, And this type of magic is that which separates husband and wife, meaning it's like a type of mind control where you can affect the relationship between a man and a woman so much that you could separate them and make them hate each other. And one could argue, the results of magic is, control of emotions. But if you only have to look at today and how the world can be controlled through emotions. But that to the side, just want to finalize with this. There's something to be said about what is going on behind the scenes and what we're told this world is about. And I would say that it's very deliberate, and that some people who are quote unquote, scientists who represent modern day thought and ideas, I think some of them are in the know, and I think some of them are paid to push this disinformation and to keep separate mythology and science. And this topic, the topic of the Jinn, is the nexus point of all three. The topic of the Jinn brings science, it brings mythology and religion all into one space. And this is why it's such an important topic today, because we have people who are coming out from these programs in America, whistleblowing and saying that actually there is another creature on this planet with us.